Now, hello everybody, I'm Ann Thompson at IndieWire. Hovering nearby is the great Demi Moore. Please come and join us. I read about this dog.
She is famous.
Adorable, adorable. So we don't have that much time, so we're going to rush right through this and get to all my questions.
Jump in.
I'm going to jump in. First of all, congrats on the CCAs.
Thank you.
She just won Best Choice Award, adding to the Golden Globe, and the Oscar nomination. It's all good. So how are you feeling? You said something the other night about how the movie seems to be resonating with people. Tell me a little bit more about how you know that to be true, besides the fact that it's a hit and it's getting all these accolades. You talk to people.
I mean, I think it just, well, first of all, who just saw it for the first time? Oh, wow. Okay. I just like to take a moment and say, are you doing okay? It's a lot. It's a lot, and just know it can take a couple of days. I think the Resonance one, I have heard people who've gone back 2 and 3 times. I think, some of you are here. I think the impact of it touching our humanness is what I hear. I hear from people, strangers, who just kind of express their appreciation for it, reminding them to be a little more kind and gentle to themselves. And I think just the overall aspect that's thought-provoking in just, in reevaluating their own lives, where they're giving too much value to the external and not enough to the internal. So, and then I think just strictly on a cinematic experience for people, like this is something they've never seen. So I feel like it's kind of across the board, and also across the board from, a huge demographic, which is just beyond truly anything we could have imagined or hoped for.
All over the world.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, this is a global phenomenon. I saw it first at Cannes. Now, what was that like to be at the Palais and show it there and not have seen it? This was your first time seeing it.
It was my first time seeing it completed, and first of all, it's like a 2,000 person screening, which of people who all love cinema. But it was a little overwhelming. Obviously, my first time to have a film at Cannes on top of it all. And
your first red carpet at Cannes?
Yes. And I went in, Margaret Qualley was sitting, one person between us, and we both really had no idea. Like, this truly could have been amazing, as it seems to have unfolded, or it could have been a disaster, and we were kind of prepared for both. And maybe more prepared for it to be a disaster. And I just kept looking over at her going, I couldn't believe the response. Everyone really was with it. And so, I think this whole journey has been really a continued experience of real humility and awe at this, because as we know, it just doesn't always happen this way.
Well, you had a great run. You had a very good run in Hollywood, and you kept working. I think I saw you in a lot of things. Margin Call. You've been around. You're still doing stuff. So, Margin Call. Margin Call is one of those movies I watch over and over again in some obsessive way. I don't know why. But what I want to know from you, though, is why do you think Coralie Farge, the filmmaker, went so big on the gross out horror at the end? I'm going to go there.
I think it was really reflective of what her internal experience was with this issue. I think this is such a personal film for her. I think that she has a particular penchant of her own, cinematic loves of films that are, in this genre. But I think that it was really reflective of kind of this violence that she was experiencing, that she felt. And I mean, I don't want to speak for her, but I think if anyone is, I don't know if anyone's seen her film Revenge. You know, I think that there is a part of pushing the envelope, and in this case, I feel like the very delicate line she walked, and it is a delicate one because anything that just didn't bridge in just the right way could have taken you out of what's the first 2/3, which is very grounded more in something that's very relatable and human. And you could have then diluted it through the ending that was so crazy. But I don't know. I don't know if I could fully, like, I think I'm riffing here, trying to think of 100% what it is that she did. All I know is that she was working the fire hose of blood herself at the end. And perhaps that might explain more of what it was all about than anything.
I was going to say that there's a feeling of unfettered, you know, like she just let it go, no holds barred, that she just went for it.
Yeah, and I think she really wanted to give a very visceral experience. And I mean, when I was watching it in Cannes, it was the first time when I heard people laughing, and because it's so over the top. I mean, just when it gets weird and you think it can't get any weirder, it does. And then it does again, and you're like, holy shit. And yet it gives you that step back to almost like have the relief from how painful some of the early parts, which were really my job to bring you the pain.
So do you think we've been making progress with how women are treated in the industry, or does this movie reflect how much we haven't made progress?
Oh, I think we definitely have. I think there's, much more diversity, much more inclusivity. I mean, look at some of the films this year alone. Look at some of the female performances. My peers, it's incredible. I mean, there's Nicole, Angelina, Fernanda, like and Marianne Jean-Baptiste, like there are all women of age that I think that there is change. Does that mean we, don't still have a ways to go? I think we do. But I think we would be remiss to stay stuck in the problem, and in a way, for me, it's like part of the reflection in the film. Too much focus on all that we're not when we could be celebrating all that we are.
And Margaret Qualley, how was it working with her as a member of the younger generation? Is she stuck in some of the old tropes, or has she moved on from them?
No, I think, I can even look at a film like Honora, where she is playing, a stripper, an exotic dancer, and look at my experience of playing a stripper and how unprepared the world was to really accept me in that role, and see how they're embracing, striptease, and
see, I paid $12 million. Congratulations!
Yes, I did. But to see how they are recognizing her work in this without a hesitation, without a judgment that's preconceived, and meaning they're seeing past the external and seeing the humanness. And I think that's what we want, is stories about different humans. We want to find ourselves in these stories. And we're all different, and that's what makes our world interesting.
You actually were breaking barriers all along, and I like to always think of G.I. Jane. This is a really good movie if you haven't seen it. It's with Scott, who always has been a bit more enlightened about strong women than some directors. He made Thelma and Louise, after all. Exactly, Sigourney Weaver.
What's happening? Elise, she made...
There's a dog handler.
Sorry. Thank you, sorry.
What's her name again?
It's Pilaf,
Pilaf.
a mouse.
Adorable. So you shaved your head, you bulked up, you showed what a woman could do, not just in the context of the movie, but as an actress.
I think for me, if I really, and I've had a lot of time during the course of going and talking about this film to really look at where some of the threads are in films that I feel I've chosen, but have also chosen me. And one of the threads has really been, like taking on roles that are also bringing about things that are provocative, but not in a sexual way, but in the sense of it being thought-provoking, challenging the question, challenging the status quo. And for me, G.I. Jane was definitely one of those that really excited me, challenged me in many ways, physically, emotionally, but certainly physically. But it also addressed a big question of why shouldn't a woman be in combat if she's good at it and wants to be there? Why wouldn't we want her there? And so at that time, again, I don't know if they were quite ready for that question to be brought forward. But it was, for me, it pushed me out of my own comfort zone, which is always a great barometer, because I know on the other side of whatever I step into, not only will I feel I will grow as an artist, but I'll grow as a person.
So is that the one where you would ride a bike all the way to work every day?
No, actually that was...
That was a different one. Indecent Proposal.
Indecent Proposal. I lived in Malibu, had a new baby I was feeding through the night, and would bike from Malibu to Paramount and then work a full day. Don't know if that, I mean...
Why did you do this?
That's exactly the question. Why? You know, one, I think it's really reflective of my own journey of being very hard on myself, very, I think I had a lot of fear and that I attached around my body needing to be a certain way. I think I felt I had a lot of pressure around having a lot of love scenes. And I think also as someone who had just had a baby, felt like it was a time where when I started to have my children, it was kind of still looked at a little bit like you're supposed to choose one or the other. And again, for me, I just didn't understand that to be a truth. Didn't seem to be a truth for me. And so I also felt a huge responsibility to show, yes, I can do both. I can manage both. I can get back in shape, and I can do this film. I can show up. I can be the baby. I was a little crazy. Because I can look back now and go, what was I trying to prove? But I appreciate that time because that's also like in finding greater acceptance of myself as I am right now with where I am. As I went into that film, I had a greater compassion. I had a greater compassion for who Elizabeth Sparkle is, for having put myself through such torturous experiences.
You did a beautiful job. I was curious if it liberated you in some kind of way.
Oh, definitely. I think that's, there's always something that you get, a gift of some sort, I think, on the other side, no matter what your experience is, good, bad, indifferent. And for me, I feel like I came out on the other side of this with even more liberation within myself. And look, I went into this knowing this was going to be an extremely vulnerable, raw, challenging experience, that it was asking of me to share of myself emotionally and physically in ways that, you generally might not want everyone to see of you, that it was not going to be glamorous, that in fact it was going to be highlighting things in an even more exaggerated, distorted way. But the gift of that is like laying it out on the table. It removed also the fear because there isn't anything that's hiding, and it allowed me to share and really be seen not for the outside, but I think for the depth of who I've become on the inside.
And was there a scene, and I think of the mirror scene because that's an obvious one, but was there any other, or is that it, where you really did have a tough time with it?
I actually think, everything was difficult on this, but I would say one of them also difficult was the scene in the beginning when I have the substance and I'm nude and I'm looking at myself in the mirror, and just being there, being, observed also while observing myself, because that's where the camera was. It just was a very exposing feeling, and so it was one of really having to kind of navigate whatever of my own ego came up, and to really just let go, so that I could really be present. You know, the interesting thing that I just kind of thought about in the last actually couple of days is how our human nature when we look in the mirror, and obviously I have a lot of scenes where I don't have another actor to play off of, I only have myself, and how our nature when we look in the mirror is to not look for what's right, but to look for what's wrong. And so much of, you know, my prep work was really so that I could really create a very full, rich, complete, whole life for Elizabeth. And I really went through every scene anchoring myself in because I didn't have that luxury of someone else, so that I could be in dialogue with myself. So there was thoughts, communication, conversation going on for me in every scene when I was alone. And even with that said, it, you know, when you don't have someone else to kind of have that barometer, you know, there were days I definitely walked away going, I hope this doesn't become repetitive or tedious or not seem engaged. Because I really felt, in a certain way, a responsibility to really anchor this in reality, really so that it could go to those other places. Because without that, I don't know if it would have as much depth or meaning.
They were lucky to have you.
Oh.
So moving on from there, I'm curious. Are you working with Boots Riley?
I am working. I did work with Boots Riley.
It's done.
Wait, I have one day left actually, and wow, what a joy! So he is.
You all know Boots Riley. He's a San Francisco
filmmaker.
filmmaker.
Like amazing. So you know he did. You know, Sorry to Bother You, which is an amazing film if you haven't seen it. It was such a joy. I literally went and I did 1 week in Atlanta with them, and they were really long days, but the collaborative nature that he brings on his sets and in the material, and it's, you know, it's another wild one, but so fun. It was really a treat. It's a very different character for me.
I don't know, I feel like you're fearless.
She was really fun. I mean, she's definitely very quirky, kind of narcissistic, but in terms of like working with a filmmaker who has such vision, but has such a centered sense of himself that he has the latitude to give everybody room to participate. It was a beautiful experience.
So we're gonna open this up for questions. Just raise your hand and I'll point at you. With the mustache.
What was it like being in the makeup?
At
the end with the, because that was your real face, right?
So it was a mold of my face that was animated. The very end, that was one of the only visual effects. Everything else was basically practical effects. So Margaret had to endure the Monster Eliza Sue suit. I just had to do mine in alone in a room, squeaking along. But the other part, but in fact, mine was a much more complex makeup, doing the very degraded state that, which I had anywhere from 6 to 9.5 hours of makeup, depending on what we had. And, you know, for any actors in the room, I'll say it's definitely an easier read on paper. And you learn a lot, but I think also in terms of kind of shifting the time spent in the chair, if you have the ability to really get still and quite zen, it also allows you to really shift and start to really embody this different physicality by that time. And you know, I found the only thing that helped me once it was all complete, I would take maybe even a minute to just go and look at myself in the mirror so that I could really kind of align with what my outsides looked like, because you still feel like yourself on the inside. But it's definitely, I gained deep appreciation for actors who've done entire films with this kind of degree. But we had an incredible team that they were remarkable, and obviously they're nominated as well as they deserve to be.
One of us is yeah. Okay, the woman there, yeah, you.
How did you know to say yes and trust the director? At all?
I think part of it is it's taking a risk. I mean, she had only done one other film, so I definitely, it's like you look at, and she had written a really detailed, unique, out-of-the-box script that, and I spent a fair amount of time, talking with her. We met 6 times before she offered it to me, in fact. And part of it was kind of just, looking at, hearing what she wanted to do, and then also knowing, as an example, the fact that she was talking about Margaret Qualley to play, the other half, which really told me that she was looking, for performance first, and that the physicality was important, but not the priority, as opposed to just casting somebody that looked so similar to me. But because I so respected Margaret's work, that also gave me a confidence. And the rest of it truly was like, I didn't know. And so, but I knew that there was something worth taking the risk for. And that's the thing, is that when you stop doing that, you stop growing. And in truth, part of my own personal journey was, I can't say to you that I had felt I had had a piece of material come along that had such complexities for me to pour myself into. And we're only as good as the work we're able to do. So I'm really grateful that, this, material was also kind of brought to me. And then in the end, you just give it everything. And as I said, it doesn't always work this way. But either way, I knew that I was going to have something greater of myself on the other end. So,
All right.
thank you.
There's a blonde over here, and you can go.
Yeah.
Yeah, over here to Demi, amazing
Oh, so sorry.
performance, thank you, and I love the movie. And how do you think that we women can relate and learn from the character in a way and take it to me like, okay, this is, it's so obvious, we're not supposed to try to be honest, but is there anything else? Recommend, like, high school and all that, but is there anything else? And what did you learn from it, if anything? Like, what do you have to share?
I think, again, and I feel like I said it a little bit earlier, which is, obviously I have 3 daughters, and a lot of our conversations around this, and one of the things that came out of one of those conversations was this idea of not wasting time focusing on all that you're not, when you could be celebrating all that you are. It's when we fight against something that it leaves us, diminished or smaller, contracted. And the reality is, when we embrace who we are, truly as we are, in whatever moment we're at, whether we're 20, 40, 60, 80, and we start to appreciate all of those different elements, our imperfections, I think then the world on the outside sees us for how we see ourselves. But we can't wait for it to happen on the outside first. This is an inside job. And I think collectively, when we reclaim and hold that power, when we see the beauty in who we are, and by the way, we might be a little more loosely wrapped at 60 than we were at 30, but would you trade the gifts, the wisdom, the experience for that? I can say I certainly wouldn't. Thank you. You're welcome.